Welcome to the Room of Lives. I'm your host, Neil. This introduction is going to be a little bit rambly because normally I write stuff down and then I read it, but now I just hit the record button. So I recently went to Brazil for the first time, and it was an interesting experience. One of the main reasons I went was to go to an ayahuasca retreat. And this was in the state of Bahia in Brazil. And it was a pretty transformative experience for me. It was a 9-day ayahuasca retreat in which we drank ayahuasca 4 times. And in this retreat, I met the guy who is our guest today. His name is Hussein, and he originally grew up in Shiraz, Iran. And over lunch at the retreat one time, we were just having a conversation with Sylvia, the facilitator of the retreat, and he happened to mention something about his first marriage. And Sylvia asked, how did you get married with your first wife? And he said, oh, well, it's kind of a long story. I was only sort of, seeing this person at that time. Or she was a friend. And we were driving to some place with anti-government propaganda hidden in the car. They got stopped and they got searched and they found the anti-government propaganda. So Hussein was arrested and he then had a death sentence. Now the girl's brother, I guess, had powerful connections, and they eventually managed to get rid of the death sentence and get Hussein out of prison after a while. But the one thing that they would not budge on is that they found Hussein and this girl together, and according to the law at that time, only men and women who are married could be traveling together. So that was something that they could not do anything about. So Hussein and this woman had to get married. So he just said that, and I was like, whoa, that's the story behind just why you got married to the first woman. I wonder how or what else happened in the rest of your life. And so at some point I asked him, I was like, hey, so it seems like you've gone through a lot in your life. And he said, oh my God, you would not believe it. I've had like a crazy life. And I said to him, hey, I have a podcast. Would you like to have a recorded conversation during this retreat for this podcast? And I was asking all of this in front of Sylvia, the retreat facilitator. Hussein agreed, but then afterwards, Sylvia took the two of us aside and said, guys, I don't think this is a good idea for you to be recording this podcast here. First of all, the stuff that's going to come out and become public might cause trouble for Hussein. He has been through enough. And if the Iranian government, and Hussein did actually say that speaking out like this can have consequences. People have been assassinated. But he personally was not that worried. And he said, well, his wife is worried, but he does not care about these things so much. So Sylvia was worried about that. She said, Hussein, you've been through a lot. I don't want worse things again to happen to you. And second, you're going to be bringing up all of this trauma from your life in sharing your story. And the ayahuasca kind of like opens you up, and then all this trauma comes up. There could be consequences. So Sylvia said it's her opinion that we should do it at some other time. I was a little bit bummed out, But then Hussein and I were walking away from that conversation, and I said, Hussein, if you think you're fine with this, and let's just, we can just have the conversation, and then you keep the file. We record it on your phone, and then you decide if any of that goes online. You can let me know if you only want part of that to be published or none of it. And he said, yeah, okay, sure, let's do it. So we recorded this podcast about his life story, sort of in secret, away from Sylvia's knowledge. And at the end, I was like, so was that good? Can this go public with your face and name and everything? Although not his full name. He said, yeah, that's all good. So that was good, but that night I had a dream. And in the dream, I saw that there was a man in front of me, and next to the man, there was a tall fire. But how fire looks kind of like made of a sort of transparent yellow material? This fire was not like that. It was made of like solid crystalline material, and it looked like sky blue crystals. And this fire was next to the man. And then at some point, it seemed like I did something to put that fire on that man. It looked like I did something to put like water up to this man's knees. And this, once again, was like this sky blue crystalline sort of water. And he was, in the beginning, just standing up to his knees in this water, no problem. And then all of a sudden, this water caught fire, and this man was just on fire, and it was this sky blue crystalline fire. And I felt really bad. I was like, I did that to him, And I woke up from the dream, and at first I didn't know what the dream was about. And then I realized that it has to do with something that Hussein shared in his life story for the podcast. At some point, he was in Iran, and at night, he tried to set fire to a grocery store as sort of like an anti-government political statement. And as he was pumping the petrol or gas or whatever it was into the grocery store, some of it spilled back onto his legs. And then when the petrol caught fire, his legs also caught fire. So I realized that my dream was referring to that, and the man I had seen in my dream catch fire was Hussein. And then I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, well, in the dream it seemed like I was responsible for setting the man on fire. And my interpretation was that this fire was the rage of the Iranian government that could, destroy Hussein, that he had been sort of rebelling against and then running away from a lot of his life. And in the beginning, this was just like next to him. It wasn't hurting him because he had managed to sort of escape from it. But then the water that I put on Hussein, it was by itself a benign thing, and it was the podcast. And we thought, that, even though Hussein is a little bit worried about this and Sylvia is worried, it's probably going to be fine, just to put this podcast online. We are agreeing to do this. And so he stands up to his knees in this thing for a while, and then the podcast catches fire. And as a consequence of the podcast catching fire, Hussein catches fire. And so that's where the guilt came from in the dream, is that I did this. So the next day I went and told Hussein that I had this dream. And he said, oh, no, don't worry about it. It seems like I added to your problems. And he was still fine with me publishing the podcast. So I was like, fuck it. Let's just do this. So here is that podcast. And I hope that Hussein does not catch fire. As you will hear, he has had an extremely traumatic life with a lot of a lot of crazy things. So when we were at the ayahuasca retreat, we were, taking the ayahuasca at nights during ceremonies, and it brings up trauma in the form of purging, which most commonly for us was just like retching or vomiting. And when Hossein and I talked, I had noticed, and I had brought it up with him, that it seems like even though he went through a lot of trauma, the way that he talks about it is in this kind of emotionally removed, very calm way. And he said, it's probably suppressed sort of deep inside, the emotions. So when he shares about his traumatic story, he doesn't really feel like crying or anything, but maybe his therapist that he's talking to starts crying. And then Hossein thinks, man, you need help. So I told Hossein that it sounds like he has had to suppress these feelings very deeply away from his conscious mind in order to survive. So there's some kind of a channel of communication from the subconscious to the conscious that is blocked. But when he's sharing his story with someone for whom that channel is not blocked, then it's as if these emotions sort of laterally go into the next person and come out in terms of, their bodily expression, even though they cannot be channeled like that through Hossein. So we were just talking about this, and then that night or the following night, Hossein finally had an ayahuasca journey in which some of this trauma broke through in the form of purging. So for a long time during that night, we heard him just retching violently into his bucket. And I was a little bit worried. I mean, he was just like going on for a while. And the next day, in our sharing circle, he said that this was the first night in which he was seriously challenged by the ayahuasca, and things started coming up. And he started feeling like he couldn't breathe, that something was stuck in his throat, and he thought he was going to die. And then he realized that what was stuck in his throat was an insect. It was the size of his fist, and it was this spidery-looking insect with many legs and many spines and all these claws and so many different eyes that were fiery red. And it was stuck in his throat, and he couldn't breathe, and he just wanted to throw it up. And so he was just retching and it just would not come out, and he thought he was going to die. And eventually he threw it out. And when dawn broke, he looked in his bucket to see if the insect was there. It wasn't. But over time, Hossein started feeling a lot better. So I think it's very interesting how something kind of amorphous and psychological, such as trauma, the expulsion of that is transformed by the ayahuasca into something visceral or physical, like throwing up, So it just kind of transforms something amorphous and psychological into like a sort of physical, more concrete phenomenon. So anyway, here's Hossein's life story.
Normally what happens is that sometimes I know a little bit about the person before.
Yeah.
So I can kind of prepare a little bit, like what do I want to ask them.
Sure.
But in your case, it's just a little bit. I only heard a little bit about your life story, so I'm just kind of interested because it feels like you have been through a lot of interesting experiences. So maybe let's just start with a kind of like a summary of your life story.
Mm-hmm.
And you can choose which parts you want to expand or something like that. Basically a little bit, about your childhood and like kind of your experiences coming all the way to over here, whichever points you seem like kind of interesting or they kind of stand out to you. And let's sort of start with that. And then based on that, I might have tell me more about this. You know?
Sure.
Yeah.
So starting with introducing myself, yeah?
Yeah. It's very informal.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
all my podcasts are like real life conversations.
Yeah,
so.
sure.
Yeah.
So, my name is Hossein, and I'm coming from small city near Shiraz, which is the south of Iran. Population was around 80,000 that time, and I was born in quite wealthy family. My dad was engineer, but he was away most of the time, and my mom was living in my grandma's house with a few aunties, and they had lots of cousins and uncles. Because in old time in Iran, big houses had like several rooms, 10, 15 rooms with a big yard in the middle, with a nice little ceramic and mosaic pond in the middle. So I was born there, but my mom was 16 when she gave birth to me. And I don't think when I spoke to my mom that she was happy in that house. She was bullied. She was 16. My dad was away, and she was bullied by my aunties, grandma, and they didn't treat her well, force her to do all the chores, cleaning or cooking. So I was born that time with lots of cousins around me. The memories, it comes from like I was 3 years old. So my first bad memory started. We were playing in the garden near the little ponds, and suddenly I was touching the water, so I washing my face, and then two of my cousins, they were 2 years older. They kind of lift me and pushed me into the pond. The pond was quite deep, actually, nearly 1.5 meters, and I was a little boy. So unfortunately, I couldn't do swim at that time. And then I was drowning, coming up the water, and started screaming. And that time, I passed out, and I don't know what happened. And then I woke up like 10 minutes probably later or so, and then I remember my grandma over my head and pushing my chest, and I throw up water or so, and then I was okay. My grandmother, I remember that she punished them, and I had quite good time in the house because my grandma, I was my grandma's favorite boy. The reason is because my dad was the youngest son of the family. They had few sons, few daughters, and my dad was the youngest son. And in old time in Iran, tradition was the oldest son of the youngest son, when he was born, the name was after the grandpa.
Okay.
So my actual name was Abdul Hussein because my grandpa's name was Abdul Hussein. I always hated my name, especially the part of Abdul, because it was too religious, first of all. The second was sound funny, and then lots of kids, they were taking a mick of me and then kind of laughing at my name. So I always wanted to change, but obviously I wasn't allowed to do that. And I remember an incident when we went to school, my dad, and he wanted to register me for the school. And then my dad was parking his motorbike, and I went to the headmaster, and then headmaster asked me, "What's your name?" And I said, "Hussein." And then while I was saying Hussein, and my dad entered the room and then heard Hussein, And then he said, no, it's not Hussein, it's Abdul Hussein. Obviously, smacked me, nearly fell over from the chair.
Because he knew sort of that you didn't like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I hated the name. Then I remember I was 6. In Iran, normally you start when you are 7. But my dad wanted me to start a school because I was quite a clever boy. And then he went to speak to school because he was a friend with the headmaster or so. And then they said, okay, if you bring a chair and a little desk, he can come in. So in that time that I started year 1, the system was like that you had to pass a final exam each year to be able to go to the next year. So lots of kids that they couldn't pass the final exam, they stayed in the same class. And we had 4 or 5, 11, 10 years old that they couldn't pass the exam, so they were in my class. I was clever. I was loved by teachers because obviously I answered the questions, and my teacher, I remember, she was treating the boys very badly because they didn't let them to talk. They were always at the back of the class. And unfortunately, it happened that because I was answering all the questions, because my teacher was requesting to, okay, Hussein, you answer. And unfortunately, as soon as we entered to the outside the class in the break time, I was beaten up by boys. They fingering me. They put me in the corner and then pushed me along, and then kind of putting fingers in my trousers or whatever. So, and I said to my teacher that this is what they do to me. So, and then what she did, she took a kind of ruler and then started asking them to come in front of the class and start smacking them on their hands. It didn't stop them to bullying me. I then actually encouraged them to do more and more. And I remember every single break I tried to run away and I couldn't because they always find me somewhere to do whatever they wanted to do. I hated my childhood. I never enjoyed the school, even though I was really enjoying the lessons, but never the environment in the class. I brought up like that. Then I was around 6. My grandma, another grandma, my mom's mom, had also big house and a big garden in the middle. So she had several rooms, and she rented a room to a police officer, which he was living in that house. I remember one day I used to visit my grandma, and she used to cook for me or so. And one day I came, and I was going to pass the garden, go to the other side to my grandma, and then the police officer saw me and then called me in and says, oh, come, I need your help. So first of all, I didn't know. The second,
how old were you at this
around time? 6, a bit more than 6 years old. I remember just started that school. So even I knew that was going to happen, I was so scared because he was a big guy with a big mustache and he was a police officer. So unfortunately I went in, closed the door and forcing me. So let me go out after when he finished half an hour, 40 minutes, and I was screaming and crying, and he was holding my mouth by a towel. And I went out straight, ran away from the house and couldn't talk to anybody, couldn't talk to my grandma because they wouldn't do anything to this guy. He was quite powerful in that town. I didn't talk to my mom, especially my dad. My dad, I believe he loved me But he had so much trouble in his life, bullying by his brothers, beating up by his brothers, that I think he learned the same way. So with reason or no reason, I was a boy, obviously. I was a little bit maybe naughty. And I remember summertime in the house was hot. My dad used to have a nap around lunchtime. I didn't want to have a nap. Also, I was either in the house or in the garden or so, making kind of a bit of noise. And then he used to beat me up. Almost on a daily basis. I remember one occasion that I don't know what I did, and he lifted me up, and he was very tall guy. He lifted me up on his arms, holding me up, and let me go. He was so angry, and then he started kicking me to my stomach. So I remember that time my auntie was in our house, and then suddenly she heard my scream, and then she came in and started screaming, and then begging him to let me go. Finally, he let me go, and he said, "I'm not finished with you yet." Oh, wow. And then he left. I hated my mom because in these occasions that my dad used to beat me up, my mom used to go and hide in the kitchen or in the garden because probably she was scared of my dad as well. So I never forget, and I never forgave my mom because of her actions till probably a few years ago, which I worked on myself after so many therapy and counseling or so. I learned to overcome these feelings, and I stopped hating my mom, and then I came in peace with my dad as well.
So this level of really rough, sort of violent parenting, is this something that was sort of culturally common at that time in Iran, or do you think even compared to that he was too much?
I believe it was a culture, because the only thing they knew is beating a child up and teach him how the good behavior is, or how the life is. Not even physically abuse. I remember he used to wake me up. Even I was like 8-9 years old, and wake me up 3 o'clock in the morning, 3-4 o'clock, start getting light, and even in the middle of winter, wake me up and sleep in my bed, asking me to go out from the house and go into the garden or outside the house. Sometimes even he asked me to go outside the house to study and doing revise and everything else. I remember so many times going out, it was cold and I was crying and dark, scared. And remember many occasions I went in the field with the growing wheat and barley or so, and then I was laying down in the middle to get a little bit more warmer. And then I didn't do any revise or any study because I wasn't able to do that. I didn't need to do revise because I was either the top or the second top in my class, but it wasn't enough for him. And I remember one day my teacher asked me about times table. I wasn't fast enough, and he was friends with my dad. I remember he called the school guardian, we call the school guardian, or person that's looking after the school, cleaning, all these, and called him in. And then he said to him that hold his ear, pulling his ear, take him to his dad's shop and telling him that he can't do times table fast enough. So he took me out of the school in front of everybody, took me to my dad's shop. And it was a couple of people talking to my dad that time. And then he said, what happened? I couldn't answer the times table fast enough. And then my dad didn't ask reasons and start beating up in front of everybody and push me around till one of his friends hold his hands and said, come on, stop. So it was on a daily basis. My dad that time had a shop and also had a big chicken farm. He produced, he used to buy 1 day old chicken, like 20 or 30,000 chickens, and grow them for a month and a half, 2 months, and then selling to the market or as a meat as well. We used to, me and my cousins also going and helping him every day after school. And he used to kill the chicken, putting in the hot water. When the feather become quite a bit soft, and then we used to remove the feathers without any gloves in a hot water. So, and even though I was helping him a lot, he always used to say that you don't do enough. And look at this guy, look at that boy, how much he does for his uncle. And I remember our house and in our road, it was a shop that one of my kind of friend or class comrades, he used to work with his uncle and then helping him in the shop. My dad always kind of telling me about him, how great he is, that boy. And he was that much every day that one day we had in a house this little gun with the, what do you call it, with the air bullets.
Yeah.
So I saw him standing next to the shop and then opened the door, and as soon as I saw him, ran and brought the gun and then kind of shot him. Luckily he didn't catch him, but even though that distance would catch him, he wouldn't get hurt anyway. So he said to his uncle told my dad, and unfortunately it wasn't a good outcome of it because I hated him. And so what happened? After a few years, I watched him, he became a cab driver while the boy, while I was quite kind of successful. But it wasn't enough for my dad. So I remember I used to join the religious classes because the teacher wanted me to go because, again, I could speak that time Arabic and everything else. And they wanted me to stay in front of the queue and then praying, and then other boys standing behind me in a prayer. Then they encouraged me to join in a Muslims prayers Thursday evenings, and I went with a few friends. And unfortunately, we had a mullah. He was teaching us about Quran or whatever. And then one evening when we wanted to go back home, and then he asked, everybody goes apart of Hussein.
Oh.
And so he took me to the back room and started touching me and tried to pull my trousers down. And I suddenly got the encourage and then pushed him away and then ran away. Start crying and screaming, and I went straight away and banging to the door of our house, and my mom came, and then she saw me that I'm kind of crying and said, she didn't even ask me why you're crying. So I went to the room, and I used to share with my sister and then start crying for hours. Then nobody asked me. I didn't tell anybody. Unfortunately, it happened a few occasions that I couldn't talk to anybody. Reason, I don't know. Then
it seems like you had a lot of experiences where you were not protected and you were like must have felt pretty unsafe.
Absolutely, you are right, because I had no one to go and talk to, and I felt that I was hated by my parents, and I felt that I was unwanted child, and then other memories was like that. I had severe toothache all the time, and on a weekly basis I used to go to dentist with the abscesses, with the infection, and he used to pull my teeth out without any anesthetic or anything else. So I grew up with all these feelings and fear, and I think at that time that I decided actually I want to one day I become a doctor or a dentist. So, slowly grew up and went to same school. That time my sister joined me as well, and unfortunately it started happening with bullying to her as well. And boys, they were bullying her because of me, and I couldn't protect her much because I was a little boy, and then they were 4 or 5, 10, 11 years old compared with me like 7 and 8. So every day I was blue and black, coming home and suffering. So I wanted, my only dream and wish was that school is going to be finished. Become summer, that I don't need to suffer much. So I was quite isolated. I didn't want to go out playing with the friends.
I feel like I can kind of maybe see the origins of why you are introverted.
Absolutely, yeah. Hiding in the rooms, and age 12, 13, I learned to play chess, and I was either in my sharing room or in my dad's shop. I used to play chess with myself, or if somebody passed by, I used to teach them and play chess with them. And it was funny that I became actually age 15, 16, I became champion in chess within only 3-4 years learning chess.
Wow.
But unfortunately after that, when the revolution happened, and then the...
When you say champion, what do you mean?
Became the number 1.
In Iran?
Iran.
Oh my
in the,
God. Wow.
It wasn't a national team, but it was a kind of county team. So, unfortunately, after a few years, when the new government came, they forbid playing chess in Iran. Whoever had chess or playing chess would be arrested. So we stopped playing chess, which was my...
Did they explain why?
No, because anything they were thinking that, chess is a gambling. So whatever they could put hands on, they would forbid. Music, forbidden. Chess, forbidden. Women are riding horse, riding bicycle, playing basketball, sport, forbidden. Everything was forbidden. So that time I was nearly 14. My dad wanted me to go to a better school in Shiraz, a bigger city. So he asked me and asked my auntie, I had an auntie in Shiraz, that if she gonna look after me and staying with them. And he used to pay her. So, and he put me in a private school. He wanted me to become obviously educated, so he cared, but he didn't know which way. So I stayed with my auntie. She had 2 sons, Unfortunately, they were quite poor. They didn't feed me properly. So my dinner, for example, was a piece of bread and 3 or 4 small meatballs that was as big as my fingertip, at meatballs. No salads, nothing, and a glass of water. So always I used to sleep, go to bed hungry. Physically,
were you getting the same treatment as what you had?
Normally, she used to give them a bit more food when I wasn't there, or take them to kitchen without me kind of noticing. So I was living with them. That time, the Iranian protest started, and I was riding my bike home.
These are protests against the government?
It was that time against the Shah.
Yeah.
So when I saw, I stopped, and then it was in front of the university in Shiraz. I stopped, locked my bike, and I went in, and then I saw few people, university students. So they were organizing a protest by tomorrow or so. And then I went closer, and then it was, remember, it was a girl asked me, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm this." And she said, "Come on in, come on." And then she invited me in there, and then talked to me a bit and about what they do, this and that. And then I was fascinated. So I decided that I'm going to actually join them. So I joined them every day. We used to go sometimes in hidden houses, some places, and I was distributing leaflets for them. And
what was the position of the manifesto, or what kinds of ideas were in
ideas was the group was called Chirik Haye Fadai, means the guerrilla. That it was a communist or a socialist group against the Shah, and obviously later on against the government, Muslims government as well. So we did lots of protests, and then obviously happened that Shah left Iran, and then the new government came in, and then we find out obviously they are not going to be a good people, and we start protesting against them as well. We wanted them to go. So I went with lots of protests, and a couple of times arrested, but they left me because my young age, I wasn't even 17 yet, and asking me to sign a paper that I'm not going to do it again, and then they let me go. That time, because the government kind of started, they weren't so aggressive yet. But later on, it became more and more aggressive when they got the power.
But even though they were not aggressive, it must have been a little bit scary to go into this protest.
Oh, of course,
did
absolutely.
you not feel scared about what would happen?
Yeah, but then the thing is that believe me or not, I wasn't scared. I love to take risks.
Yeah.
And I didn't care.
Yeah.
Because I gone through so much in my life that was excited for me, actually.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep and I couldn't wait till the day after to go back to protest, to do the protest. So the time passed, and then kind of I finished my high school. Then when I finished my high school, I wanted to get away from the country, but unfortunately in Iranian system, you had to go to military before even you get the passport.
Oh.
Yeah, 2 years, boys 2 years, but the girls, obviously, they weren't allowed to do the military.
So you cannot even leave the country unless you have served in the military?
Not at all. That time, not at all.
Mm.
You didn't even get passport.
Mm.
So I went to military with a few boys. We didn't even tell my dad because I didn't want him to get upset.
Mm.
At that time, the war between Iran and Iraq started. So we went to have training for 3 months.
Mm.
Then I rang my family a few days later and told my mom that please tell my dad I've joined the military and this is my kind of choice. They were upset. My mom was crying. I remember over the other side of the phone, and my dad heard her. I remember he took the phone and started screaming, and he said, "You're not my son anymore." All these.
Why? What was his?
Because he was scared that I'm gonna die in a war or end up in the war. So then we finished the training. Then they asked us where part of the country you want to go. Either is the south to fighting against Iraqi, or go to north and against the Kurdish rebels. So I didn't want to go to north to kind of fight against the Kurdish, so we chose to go to south. So we went to south, and then it was couple maybe first or second night. I remember day after I went to see one of my friends that he was close to me in that part. We went actually near the border. Was a place called Susangard, which I remember it was summertime, and it was nearly 48 degrees. It was hot, absolutely hot. So I went to see my friend, and in his bunker, and then his friend said, "Oh, he's not here." I said, "Where he is?" And then he said he shot himself, and they took him to hospital. Quickly, I got the permission to go to, it wasn't a hospital, it was a small kind of a tent with the doctors and everything else. I went there, and then I saw him that he has a bandage on his arm. So, and then I asked him, "How are you? What happened?" So he said, "You can't believe it. Last night they asked me to go and help ambulance, to help the driver in an ambulance, and then pick up the bodies and corpse. So I couldn't bear seeing legs, arms, and bodies. So I couldn't do any more of this, because they wanted me to do every day, every night. So, and I had no choice. So I came and then took the gun and then shot my arm. That's obviously because he was shot. He couldn't carry on with military. So they released him.
There was no punishment or something for
No,
him?
because he said that it's just accidentally happened. So they couldn't prove that he did himself. So, and I remember in that town, he wasn't a popular person, because everybody kind of that time, they were against the war with Iraq, that they obviously invaded Iran that time. So they kind of hated him, because they knew he shot himself and he didn't kind of fight in the war. So I stayed there, I think 3 months. I remember one day I wanted to go and see the other part of the place that we were fighting. A couple of other friends that when we came from my town, hometown, with them, we were together, but they put them somewhere else. So one day I decided to go through and then walking behind the hills and then find them somewhere else. I got the address. And then I was going there, and I noticed a smell. And I saw behind the hills lots of bodies that they were rotten, smelling, and in heat. And the reason they didn't collected them because it was when the Iraqi soldier came in and then Iranian pushed them back. So they planted lots of mines there. So they couldn't go to collect the bodies. But I didn't know. Actually, I was walking in a mine field. And then when I saw these and I couldn't carry on again and I just start running back and didn't go. In that time that I was in military, I carried on with my organization, and every week we used to go to have to the town, having a few hours kind of a break or holiday, you want to call it, and then we could that time go and ring our family. And I used this opportunity, these few hours, I used to go to the hidden houses and talking to my contacts and bringing, taking some leaflets and bringing to the place that our base was, and distributing the leaflets, talking to people also.
Even though you were in the military.
Yeah. So unfortunately, they noticed that what I'm doing and what I did. They called me in. They said
the
military officers. They called me in, and they said, "We want you to come tonight with us to the front." So they wanted basically take me to the front. That when you go into the front, you're not going to come back.
Yeah.
So I went there, and we were only around 500 to 600 meters away from Iraqi border. So not Iraqi border, kind of position, base. So I remember that the first evening, and I was in my bunker, and then we had a mosquito net because it was hot and lots of mosquitoes there, and then a few bunkers there, and then all of us came out and sat in the mosquito net next to my bunker. And suddenly, we were eating, suddenly we heard a noise that it's a rocket coming. So normally rocket, because the sound is faster than the rocket itself, so we heard the sound, and then after like few seconds, it drops. So as soon as we heard, we start running away. Obviously, everybody panicked. What I did, I just crawling to my bunker, but the other one, they decided to stand up and run away to their bunkers. And the rocket dropped, and then I saw that a piece of shrapnel hit to one of the boy because it was light everywhere, and then chopped his head. Ooh. And it was the scariest moment in my life. Ooh. And then I saw that this boy is still running, even though he had no head.
Oh my God.
And wow. Then I went to the bunker and then lay down there, and I saw that my belly is getting warm and I'm wet. And then I start kind of hurting. And then I noticed, put my hand there, pull up my shirt. And then I saw that the blood pouring out. And I was hit by one of the shrapnel. Which unfortunately the shrapnel went in, damaged in some part of my belly. And then stayed at the back. So near the spine. So when everything calmed down, I started screaming, and I remember some people started running towards my bunker, which at that time I passed out. And I woke up few maybe seconds or minutes maybe after, when they put me in a jeep. And because of the bouncing in the jeep to take me to the big tent, it was the doctors there also. And I woke up and then started screaming because it was painful. And I went to that tent, And when they looked at me, they said he needs to go to hospital, the main hospital in the city. So they gave me a morphine and they put a bandage that is going to stop bleeding. So they drove me to the hospital, and that time they operated me. And I remember my dad told me after a few weeks when he saw me that when he contacted the doctor to say thank you, this and that, and then he said, actually, you should go and pray, because that night, it was the only night that we weren't busy and we didn't need to have lots of injured people to chop hands or arms, because obviously they didn't have time to do operation. So they end up amputate legs and arms, because it was easier for them to just amputate and then suture and everything rather than sitting and doing a kind of operation. They had no time, they had no resources. Then they did that evening. I was the only one injured that they brought to hospital. And then after that, they sent me by airplane to the capital, Tehran, and to do some more investigation also there. And I was there a couple of weeks. I remember the first time I saw my dad came in.
They were still investigating into you because you were involved in okay.
So I saw my dad coming into the room, not room, it was a big hall with lots of beds. Saw him crying coming in, and when he saw me that I'm covered with the blanket, and he started crying. He thought that my legs been cut.
Yeah.
And then I said, no, I'm okay.
Yeah.
So I stayed in hospital a couple of weeks. Then I moved back to my town and start getting stomach pain on a daily basis, severe pain that they had to take me to hospital and give me injection, so morphine injection. I mean, nobody knew what's reason is that I'm getting so much stomach pain. Doctors couldn't find anything and took x-rays. And I remember a couple of months later, I went back again to hospital with a severe pain. It was kind of final university medical student, and he was the only one in the emergency room. And then he said, let's take another x-ray. Nurse said, we have x-ray. And he said, no, let me take another one. And then he looked at it, and then he said to me, he came to me and my dad and the nurse there, he said, there is something in your stomach. What do you mean? They have left something in your stomach. So, and then he showed us and explained that, look at this thread is showing in the x-ray. This thread is only in the gauze when they use to take drain the blood. Normally they put in the design into it. If somebody leaves somewhere, they can see it by x-ray.
Oh.
And, he said straight away, you need to go to the operation room. And they asked my dad to sign a paper, and then they took me to operation room. They operated me. Woke up day after and cut the other side of my belly. First was this belly and another part here. The first one was to repair all things, and then the second one was to remove the gauze. They explained to my dad, which my dad explained it, that actually, even though they weren't busy, when they operating, they left the gauze in your stomach, which now it's got bigger, nearly 2 kilos, and then got infected. So they had to remove it, which I was okay after, but for years and years and years, was getting stomach pain, especially when I was eating fruits, and it still is the same. Getting stress, the severe stomach pain, which I had to take lots of painkillers or so. So, time passed, and a few months later, again, when I got better, carried on with my protest, carried on with my going to the hidden houses, and leaflets and everything else. And then we decided, because in that town, there were few people that they were pro-government, and they were reporting lots of boys and girls that they are in the organization against the regime. So they arrested them, they killed them, or put them in prison. So we knew some of them. What we did, one evening, we wrote some messages and everything else, and went and put it on their shops or their houses, and we give you a week. If you're not stopping your act, we're going to burn your shops and houses or whatever. Unfortunately, some of them, they didn't believe and they didn't stop. And another night after 2 weeks, we decided to go to the town, and we knew a few shops that they belonged to those pro-regimes people. So we had a gallon of petrol, and I had my motorbike. Me and one of my friends was we supposed to go to one part and another people to another part, so that we do the same time in the exact time. So it was exactly 11:45 midnight. So then.
Whoa. What was that? That looked half like a bat and half like a huge butterfly.
I think it was a bat.
Yeah.
So. I remember I put a hose in the gallon and then start sucking the petrol and put it under the door, because they had these metal kind of gate, but underneath it was a little gap. So I pushed the petrol in. I didn't realize it because it was dark, and start light up the petrol.
Was there someone inside this building?
No, nobody. It was a shop.
Just
a grocery shop.
Yeah.
So what I didn't realize, it was that actually when I sucking the petrol and pushing into underneath the door, and some of them came out under my shoes. So when I light up, and then I saw I'm in fire as well, and my friends panicked as well, and then luckily we started running, and then imagine I was in flame, and luckily like 5-6 meters away from the shop, it was a pile of sand. And suddenly my friend pushed me into the sand, and then pushed lots of sand on me, which I managed to turn off. But obviously the shop was in a fire, so, and then we ran away. We came to another part of the town. We knew it's around 12 o'clock, and 12 o'clock is already the shift of the police or the government's pro-police. They were different type. We call them pastar. They were dedicated to protect the government. They were dressing up differently. The station were different than police station, for example. So they were forceful. They were brutal. So we thought we are safe, kind of. But unfortunately, we didn't know. And it was around 5:12. And when we were running kind of or away, it was town center, and it was a big square. And then we were slowly running. Then we thought it's safe. And then I saw that somebody from the back asked us to stop. And then I turned back, even though it was 12 o'clock, but the moon was a full moon, and then you could see clearly everything. And I saw, actually, they changed the shift now. So it was 3 people with obviously gun and everything, and they asked us to stop. And then we ran away. We ran away, and then we knew that we're not going to run away far, because they're going to start shooting. So it was an old building, and then we climbed and then jumped in. When we jumped in, we had lots of leaflets with us. So the first thing I did, hide all the leaflets, and I asked my friend, you go out from the back and go on the roof and try to go to other kind of buildings, and I'm going to occupy them. So they came to outside the building. They were in a kind of light, and we were in dark, so they couldn't see me. So I told my friend to go, and then he started going back. And then they asked me to come forward. I didn't, and they start shooting kind of everywhere. And I said, okay, hold on, I'm coming. Because I knew there is no chance for both of us to run away. So I came forward, and I saw my cousin. My cousin was one of those pastor, and then he said, I saw you, and I knew it was you. And why do this, why do that? Anyway, and I said why are you doing this? You are my cousin. And he said, stop talking bullshit. Doesn't matter. You are a kind of, when you are against the Islam, you are, how you call it, a dirty person. So you need to be dead. You need to be killed. So, what had happened then, they asked me to call your friends. And I said, I don't have any friends. And then he said, I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to count till 3. If you not call him, we're going to shoot you. I knew, but by this time, he's gone. Because he was nearly 6-7 minutes gone. And then I called him name. And 10 seconds later, I saw that my friend came front. And then I said, and then I got upset, and then I said, why didn't you go? And he said, it was somebody up there as well. So he went up, but somebody there, and then he go back. So they asked us to come up, climbed up again, and then they start beating us. They put us in a van, which that time they called for backup. A van came in, they put us in a backup, in the van. They took us to a station. And by this time, they were keep punching us, swearing at us and everything else. They took us to the station, a few more punches, and they put us in a small bathrooms, both of us, till day after. Day after, they asked us to come for questions, and they took us one by one. And they asked me, what was you doing there? I said, nothing. And they asked me, did you burn the shop? I said, no. So they knew it was us, obviously, because they were the only that time. So what they did, they, in Iran, when they say, or when they believe that you lie, they used to give you 75 slashes. So they sent me to another room. They order to give me 75 slashes by, you know, I don't know if you remember, in a car with a radiator that cooling down the water system, yeah? Is a hard rubber kind of pipe. So they used to do this one, holding this one, and then kind of at the end, they used to wave with some kind of plastic and everything else to kind of a hand, kind of keep in a hand. And with that one, they used to kind of hitting people. So imagine after 2 or 3 of them, they start screaming and pain from my back. So my friend had 75 as well, unfortunately, and then we nearly passed out. We were in blood for hours and hours till somebody came in and put some bandages on our body. We were in pain for months. Oh. Then one day they said, because they used to have Friday pray, so that day they decided to go to a big park Friday pray, because it was a guy, another important mullah, came to that town, and he wanted to have a pray. So everybody invited all people to go to that park. So they, for the kind of propaganda or telling people that we are looking after our prisoner or whatever, they said, okay, we're going to take you there as well. So
I remember at that time you were still being kind of held captive.
Yes, in a small kind of bathroom. So then they took us. Remember, they put us in a van, 2 soldiers both sides, and with a gun, and they took us to the pray. We sat there, both of us, and 2 soldiers next, kind of
on
next
either
to
side.
us, other side. And then I was looking around, and I saw my father, and he was in a pray as well, but he wasn't a believer. He wasn't believing in this regime or anything, but because he wanted to see me, and
so he knew that you had.
Yes, because they had announced that we want to bring the prisoners as well.
Oh man!
So he saw me, and I don't know that time. I was young, maybe naive, and I couldn't stop myself. And then when I heard the mullah talking absolutely rubbish, and then it's just kind of, I couldn't help myself, and I stood up and started swearing at him. How can you do this to people? How can you kill people? How can you do this? The next second I saw that the gun came to my neck. Whoa. And then I just saw my dad that screamed, and I fall on the ground. They came 3 or 4 other, I think, soldiers. They took us back. They beat us up. And they decided to take us to a bigger city, to take us to a court.
So they beat the other person up also?
Yes,
2 of you?
Yeah.
Because you spoke up also.
And then they took other prisoners as well. They didn't let to sit next to each other. They were a different part that people can see them.
By the way, how was your feeling when you saw your dad there?
I felt very sad. I felt, why did I do this to him, that he suffers so much? Even though I wasn't in love with him, do you know what I mean? So then day after, they took us to a big city. We were there for nearly 6 months. We were in a quite big room, around 16 square meters, I would say, and 64 of us in that room.
Wow.
We could not walk, we could not move, we could not even turn over the night to turn back the other side. And it was a small bathroom and a shower. I remember it was a guy that he was in charge of us. He was also a prisoner, but he belonged to another organization. He was a kind of pro-regime, the same time as wasn't. So they put him as a charge, but he was there to report if anybody would talk or so. So many things, many bad things happened. He used to take the younger boys, because in that room he had several 12, 13 years old as well. He took them to the bathroom and having sex with them, because otherwise he would report them and they would obviously take them and beat them up. And I remember they had a rubbish bin, and they didn't take this rubbish bin maybe every 2 weeks. The pile of rubbish in that rubbish bin, and then creating lots of insects and everything else, and then it was whole night. I remember crawling the insects in all my body, and I remember every week we had 2 hours. They take us out of the room, and for those that were more calm and quiet, didn't protest, they let their family to come and see them. So I remember my mom came, and then when she came back 1 week later, and she said, when we took your clothes and we burned them, because it was lots of lace and in to your clothes and bless you. So then one day they said that is your court tomorrow is ready. We will take you to a judge. So I remember there was no courtroom. There was a mullah sitting behind a desk with a gun on his desk. And we were 14 of us standing in a circle in front of him. And then he started asking the first one, what have you done? And he said, oh, I was in that organization, and that's it. And then that's it. One sentence. And he, remember, lifted up his gun, and then he said to the soldiers in the room, he says, take him and kill him. That's it. No other question and anything else. But the next one, it was a friend of mine, and he and his younger brother, he was 13, and then asked him, the older brother, one of the most active member of the organization, but he knew how to talk. And then he said, he asked him, what have you done? He said, yeah, I have done this, but I kind of regretting now. And then he said, okay, enough, 15 years. And then he came to his brother, he says, what have you done? And then the boy, he starts swearing at him. It's not your business. What I have done, I'm going to do it again. And then he said, it's enough, take him and kill him. So he came to us as well, and I said, I haven't done anything, but they say that I have burned a shop. And he said 1 year. And my friend is exactly the same, 1 year. So they pushed us back to the prison, to the room, and they said, tomorrow is a Friday, we take you there. They put handcuffs on all of us, and took us by a very big van to the center of the city. And they made us to watch hanging our friends that he judged that they need to die. And what they did, they brought a few small cranes and holding a rope, putting around their neck, asking them, do you have anything to say? And all of them, they said they have no regret or whatever. And they hung them. And then they took us back.
So you watched them die?
I remember every night we were sleeping, we used to hear a cry from a room next to us. And it was a woman's voice. And a couple months later, a new prisoner came in or so, and then we were asking, I don't know who the person is or who is it. And they said, oh, it's a girl, the name is this, and it belongs to this organization, and it's been in this room for nearly 2 years on her own. And then one night, we didn't hear the noise anymore. And we asked, oh, wow, maybe they free her or they took her somewhere else. And the guy that was in charge, and he said, he heard us, and then he said, no, she killed herself in the room. So apparently she took a blanket and then put around her neck, and then holding to the window, which was never opened, but it was a metal bars, and then he hold there and then hanging somehow and kill herself. And then after 2-3 years, they find out actually she was innocent, because they arrested another member of that organization, and they find out she was behind the terror, killed one of the mullah, not that one that was in prison. So they kept her 2 years, and then she committed suicide. So then that time my dad had lots of connections. So he bribed lots of people and made them to take us from that prison to a bigger city in Shiraz, called Adilabad. Adilabad is one of the scariest prison in whole Iran. And we went there, and then...
but why did he bribe to take you to an even scarier prison?
Even though it was scarier, but when you go to that big prison, it run by both police and also pastor. So he could bribe
the
police, but not. But in the prison that we were, it was only pastor, so he could not kind of bribe easily. And it was, as I said, you had no future in that prison. Nobody knew how long you're going to stay there, because they brought the new prisoner, and quite often they killed the other ones, or they sent them away, whatever, to have a space. So we went to a bigger prison. So he actually bribed people. One of them was actually a family friend that he was an officer in that prison. So even though the judge had told we need to have 1 year prison, so what had happened, after 1 year finished, the police officer came and he said that we're going to release you kind of late evenings, because we don't want to release you daytime, because when you go out, you go through this section of the guards. So it's not safe to go kind of there. So, okay. And then I remember it was 8 o'clock, 8:30. Our friends in the room, we were 12 friends in a small rooms with the beds with 3 floors. We were there. And then they kind of celebrating for both of us that we're going out, having a tea and celebrating. And then 8:30, we said goodbye, and then we went. I remember that time, he was a very famous guy, belonged to regime. He killing hundreds and hundreds. And he was in the middle of prison that time, in the big hall. And he was arguing with a lady prisoner, which came from another part of the prison, because that big prison was 6 or 7 bands, 6 or 7 sections for boys and 2 sections for women. So they were, but the end, you coming to the end entrance, but they couldn't mix together, but it was end. So he was there and then arguing with the woman, and then we were so scared, and he has what's the name? The slug in his hand.
Like a stick.
Yeah, a stick. And then we didn't know what we were going to do. We froze. We couldn't go back because we were too close to him. It would cause problem. And that time, it was 2 police with us as well. We couldn't kind of go back because the police wanted to take us out. So when we came to pass by, and then he said, "Where are you going?" And one of the police officers told him, they call themselves brother. Says, "Brother, the sentence is finished. They're going out." So what do you mean sentence is finished? How long they had? 1 year. Who gave the sentence? That judge in that big city. But the judge is not here. I'm the judge here. Take them back.
Oh my God.
So
bad luck.
And they said, "Brother, but the sentence is finished."
Yeah.
I told you.
Yeah. So
Take them back.
Yeah.
So we went back. We stayed another year.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so till my dad bribed lots of people, they released us. And our family friends actually did the way early morning, make sure everything's okay, and then they took us back. So we went out, me and my friend. And unfortunately, my friend, nearly 3 weeks after, they found him that he was in a telephone box and talking to Germany. This is what they said, I don't know. And they said that he was talking to Germany, recruiting people and kind of financing the group. So they arrested him. They stayed there few months there. And I remember it was a new year. They said it was election that they wanted to release some of the prisoners. So one of them apparently was him. So his mom going there, and he goes to the entrance. It was a box. And then he says, "I came to pick up my son." What's his name? His name is this. So, okay, wait here. Coming back 15 years later, and they say, "Give us whatever, 20 reals, Iranian money." And she said, "Here you are, okay." And then they hand his clothes. And he said he was shot last night in prison. They killed him. And she started screaming and everything else, pulling her hair. And then after like 10, 15 minutes, it's like coming around. And he says, "But tell me, why did you take the money then?" And one of them laughed and he said, "This was the cost of the bullet. You paid for the bullet." So they killed him. And so the time passed. I was still going from one underground house to another one, leaflets, producing leaflets and everything else. So then I end up getting married by one of my friends in prison. He asked me, "When you are released, go and see my family." And they used to come to my family in Shiraz and coming and visiting. They staying, when they used to come to see him, they stay overnight with my family. He got 5 years. He stayed there 5 years, and then I was released after. So, and then I went to see his family, and then he had a sister. She was around a year and a half younger than me. Then few visits, and then I started knowing her, and then she had the same ideas, ideas with me. And then we started knowing each other, and then calling each other. So one day I decided to go from my city to their city because she used to live in north. And that time I said, okay, told my friends that I'm going to that city. And they said, oh, okay, that's great. So you can take some books and cassettes, leaflets over there and then giving to the comrades. So, okay, my car in the back seat was full of everything under the seat. So I went there and then I picked up her and we didn't know that somebody was following us. So after like 5 minutes we were sitting and discussing. While I was driving, two cars stopped us, one from the front and one at the back. And they took us to the station. And they said that they questioned us, and then I said who you are and this and that. And I said my name, but I didn't say that I was in prison. So they searched the car. They found all the books and everything. And unfortunately, she had a brother that he kind of hated me because their family were rich. Our family, okay, even though we are quite wealthy, but we are in the middle class. So they didn't want me to have anything to do with their sister. So he went and told the station, the guards, that I was in prison before. So that's it. Being in prison, books and cassettes and everything else is a death penalty 100%. So apparently my ex-wife, she was there, she started screaming when she found out, and her family, they came to take her home because she didn't do anything, she was sitting in it. So she said, I'm not going to come home, I'm going to kill myself if you're not make sure he is safe.
Wow. Yeah.
So what happened, her oldest brother had lots of connections and apparently bribed people, and they came and then they removed all the evidence that I had in my car. And then what they did, the guards, they said we cannot release them because now everybody knows that they've been together. So the only way would be that we will release them subject to that they get married.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, this is what I wanted.
Yeah.
To get married.
Yeah. It was what you wanted?
Yeah, absolutely, because I was very in love.
That is the part that I didn't know before, the first time when you told the story.
So, yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, kind of we were in love, and then, we kind of forced married, despite her family were hated me kind of.
Yeah.
And then the night of our wedding was a very sour and awful atmosphere there because they didn't want to talk to me. So that's it. We got married, and we came back to my hometown, and we loved each other. But because obviously my dad was dead by now, and then I was looking after my dad's kind of wealth. It wasn't much wealth. We find out that he had lots of debt, lots of assets, but lots of debt. So we used to live together with my mom. Unfortunately, my mom didn't treat my ex-wife very well at all. And we end up going and living in a chicken farm. I remember I was so scared because it was outside city, outside town, and having a woman there, it wasn't safe kind of enough. So we had no choice. So we Then after a few months, we got our first child. And then I think she was 6 months old. That somebody told me that they are after you, but in any moment they will arrest you. So when he gave me the evidence based on what they want to take me, so we decided to run away. And I told my wife, and my wife said, okay, that's fine. Then then I had another friend in prison, and with other friends, I knew that his brother is living in Sweden and is a filmmaker in Sweden, and he's helping people to get out of the country. So when we had a meeting with the brother, and then he said, okay, we can arrange it, and this is the cost for obviously passports and everything else. So story short, we went to the south of Iran, near Kuwait border and Dubai border. So there was a boat waiting for us. Now imagine me, my ex, and 6 months old child on a boat, dark. They took us to another bigger boat, and then after that they took us to Dubai. So in Dubai we met the brother who came from Sweden. He met us there because he was a few of his friends as well. They in the same boat that we wanted to go. So we stayed a couple nights in Dubai. He arranged everything, and then they gave us a visa in our fake passport. And then we took the plane, and we wanted to go to, that time, England. Despite I wanted to go to Sweden, but he said the only way is at the moment is easiest is the England, not Sweden. So the flight was that we stopped in Paris. That time, I don't know, it was a conflict between Iranian regime and France, that the French government or French police were very vigilant against the Iranian. So they double checked. So when they saw that we are coming from Dubai, they searched and searched and searched. That time wasn't much of computer, but they find out that actually our visa is fake. So they took us to a hotel, which was kind of a modern prison. We could not go out, and it was door were closed and everything, but it was a small kind of hotel. So then they said, we're going to have an interview with you. They did the interview, and they said, unfortunately, we cannot keep you here as an asylum because the Iranian government is crazy now at the moment, and we cannot jeopardize our relationship. So then obviously they had our passport, and then they said, tomorrow we're going to send you back to Dubai. So sending back to Dubai will send us back to Iran. So it was 100% problem. So what happened, they took us to the airport, and straight two policemen took me, my ex, my little baby, and a friend of us. A friend of us, he was 19, but he had a passport of a 49 years old. And then he grew beard to look old as well. So, and before the passengers coming to the plane, they took us to the plane, and then they gave the passport to the pilots. So we were there. My wife was crying because my daughter wasn't feeling well. So all the crews, they used to come and then hugging my little girl, and then says, do you need anything? Water, everything, sweet or so. So they said, how can we help you? And then I said, the only way that you can help us is not taking us to Dubai. And then they went to the pilots, and then they said, And then pilot called me to the front, and then he said, he introduced himself, and then he said, okay, let's see what's going to happen. First of all, the passengers, they're going to come up, and then when we're flying, I'm going to fly, first we're going to fly to Saudi Arabia, and then we're going to fly to Dubai. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask, when we're landing, ask Saudi Arabia if they can take you as an asylum. So, okay, great, thank you. So passengers came up, and then obviously they noticed we are all crying, this and that. And then when got the time that they wanted to land to Saudi Arabia, from the air, somehow he contacted the Saudi Arabia police and told the situation, and they said it's a no-go. We Iranian, we are kind of in a war with Iran. We can't accept them as a refugee. The pilot told me this is the situation, and he said, okay, I take you to Dubai, but I'm going to make sure when I'm going back to France, I'm going to talk to lots of people that I connection that hopefully they can help you. So we went to Dubai, and then we noticed that they want actually to take us back to Iran. So what we did, I was talking to my ex and my friend. He said the only option would be to hunger strike. So we refused to eat. The only thing was we asked for a little milk or so for my little girl. And she wasn't well because we weren't dressed enough. All our luggages were on the plane. And in the airport was air conditioning and cold. So all of us had a cold. So we stayed. Story short, the pilot, we saw him 2 days later. He came to us, and then he said, I've spoken to people over there, and they said they're going to come in a couple of days' time. They're going to arrange or whatever. So when the police noticed that we done hunger strike, and then we talking to people in the airport and everything else, they couldn't do much. So eventually, after 6 days, the Dubai police arranged kind of visa, or not actually visa, but they took us to the gate and sent us out, because they didn't want now, because the French pilots and the French police or whatever, lots of people they knew, and then now he was saying that the pilot that he has spoken to papers as well. So it's a lot. And then also when he came back to Dubai, he has spoken to the police there as well. So they noticed that this is a kind of a danger for them, as everything is going to be on paper or newspaper or whatever media.
Pilot did a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, without him, we wouldn't be go there. So they took us to the gate, and they said, "Go." So this time was direct flight. So to Stockholm. So before we landing to Stockholm, we went to the toilet and then damaged the passport because it was an Iranian passport, a fake, but we didn't want to show that we have a passport, because without a passport, they could not send us back. So, but in Paris was different, because we wanted to go to England. The passport still we had. So here, we destroyed the passport. We got to airport in Stockholm, and then we sat in the corner. And after a few hours, they saw us on CCTV camera, and the two police officer came, approached us. He says, "What are you doing here?" He said, "We want to apply for asylum here." So said, "Okay, follow us." They were very nice. They took us in a room, and we stayed there. They asked us if you want water or something, and then a couple hours later they interviewed us. And because that time my name was on the papers in Iran and everything else, so I said the only thing you need to contact these people or whatever, and they are actually living in Sweden, and they can prove my identity, and they can prove that what I have done, and I cannot go back. And they did some research. Few hours later, they said that's fine, no problem, and they sent us to a kind of camp, and so they gave us obviously accommodation or so, and I think it was around 2 weeks later they asked us to go to the office, and they said your asylum been accepted, a political asylum, so you are welcome here to stay. And then 3 months later they gave us Swedish passport. Amazing.
Wow.
So yeah, so we stayed there several years. My wife, ex-wife, had lots of depressions, and we had quite hard time. We were arguing a lot. So she wanted for some reason go back, even though she couldn't go back.
Iran?
Yeah, she couldn't go back, but she had the imagination. Actually, she can go back, but she couldn't because her brother was prisoner, and I was there in prison and everything. They would have killed her
She
back.
was under some kind of a delusion.
Yes. So unfortunately, even she tried to commit suicide, and she cut her arm. And luckily, when she did, she came around because my little girl was home that time. I was in kind of college. Then she was scared nobody gonna find her, so she rang ambulance. So they took her, and then they took her to a hospital, and then they called me. So I came and took my daughter. So then time passed in Sweden, and we decided to leave the country, Sweden, because it wasn't a great country for us. Because people, Swedish people, they weren't so, some of them, they weren't nice. They kind of were racist. We got lots of racial abuse. So we decided to go to England. We came to England. And straight when we came to England, accidentally we got another child. So we came to England. I started working as a dentist. Then I bought my first clinic. I was working very, very hard. I was actually a workaholic because I tried to avoid home. And so we end up several years later getting divorced. Unfortunately, was a very awful divorce. My ex was extremely bitter, very angry. I couldn't see my daughters. Every time I went to see my daughter, she was calling police. And so we got divorced after a few years. And then I started knowing my wife now. And we got married after a few years. We got 2 new daughters. And so the experience from my first marriage was, it's not going to work this way. I can't work that hard. And the life is not about working hard. So I cut down my working hours. I was extremely ambitious from one project to another project. I wanted to do more and more and more to prove myself to, I don't know, my father that they didn't exist, that I am good enough. and buying one clinic, another clinic, and buying houses, and became kind of wealthy, but it still wasn't enough for me because I thought something is still missing. I wasn't happy with myself. I'm never happy that I have achieved a lot, even though people, they were telling me, come on, after 7-8 years in England, nobody has achieved that much as a dentist that you done. Calm down. So then actually I start calming down and going to counseling. I saw a psychologist and felt better about myself a bit. My wife helped me a lot as well. So I cut down my work hours. I'm working only 2 days a week, but still some stress is involved because I am the owner of a few clinics, and by my decision is to sell everything and basically and live the life with what I have, with my daughters, with my wife, and enjoying the life. Yeah, this is my story, long story, quite hurtful story. During life in England, I decided to write a book. I wrote it handwriting and decided to give it to one of my daughter to rewrite. And unfortunately, it's so painful that every time she starts writing, so she gets upset and in tears. And she hasn't done, I don't think she hasn't done more than 15% of the book. And definitely I will somehow finish it, either give it to different companies, organizations like Ghostwriter or so to finish it. But the problem is with those companies, they don't know about our culture, about things that happened. I wanted somebody to make it to a better language, English language, and edit it, expand it, because mine is all facts. So, hopefully we'll achieve one day with this. And the reason is to show other people how they can survive, how they can be resilient, and how painful some of the experiences are, and then how the evil are these governments in Iran. So,
and this whole story that you shared with me now, are you not afraid of any of that becoming public?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think there is any danger over your head?
I don't care, to be honest with you, much. And I never think about consequences, but my wife doesn't like me to go public and always say you need to be careful, cautious. My daughters are actually with me in this situation. They have their own opinion, but my wife is very worried. So
I feel like there are some things that I feel in common with you, and one is this. Quite a few things actually, because I feel like one of those things is this nothing is enough kind of thing. I feel like I've achieved a lot, but it just feels like it's one of the feelings that made me come here. It's like I'm feeling stagnant. But even while I'm saying I'm feeling stagnant, I'm working as a postdoctoral researcher in a top university. At the same time, I'm working in 2 labs. And I have a podcast, and I'm organizing things around the city, and at the same time feeling like this is not enough. And I think part of it could be that when I was a kid, I did not get enough maybe positive feedback that, this is great, this is wonderful.
Absolutely.
Just like you talked about with your dad. And I think maybe something else that's similar is that in your case, it doesn't seem like your dad's parenting was some kind of a flawed parenting, but he cared. But the method was
absolutely,
and partly because of the culture. And I think it was the same with my dad in the sense that I think he was doing what he was thinking is the way to parent.
Yeah.
And that included a lot of comparison for me, a lot of public shaming and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other thing that I noticed is like, I also have this kind of anti-authoritarian risk-taking, like whatever, I don't care kind of thing. And
I think this all comes from the childhood, because the one thing you need to learn, or we need to learn, to love ourselves, because if we don't love ourselves, we can't love others. Yeah. I mean, for a long time, for me, happiness, I didn't understand happiness, what actually happiness is. And I wasn't happy in life. Every time I looked at the mirror, am I happy? I felt kind of miserable. I felt sad. I felt lonely. You know what I mean? You know, sometimes, I don't know if it happens to you, sometimes you missing something. It's like a homesick, But actually, I didn't know. I wasn't homesick. I wasn't feeling that I want to go back or anything. But even though I'm sitting with my family around, and then suddenly I go to a zone. And after a couple of minutes, I come around, or they telling me, where are you? And then I am drowned in my past. Do you know what I mean? But to be honest with you, the only thing is start loving yourself and feel that is enough. You have achieved a lot, and you need to understand it, because it never ends. It's going to affect your relationship, so because you end up becoming a workaholic. You want to achieve more and more, which there has no end. Has no end.
I went to my first therapy appointment recently, and after she heard these things, she said, Neil, you need to stop and celebrate your accomplishments. Do you do that? And I said, I feel for a small amount of time, that was great, I achieved that. And very quickly that feeling goes away. And I'm like, which 5 things do I need to do next?
Yeah, absolutely.
Comes again in my mind.
It's never, it's the feeling inside. It's not the achievement you're looking for. So it's not gonna end, that it says, okay, now I am achieved what I wanted. Never gonna end.
Thanks for hanging out with us today in the Room of Lives. Take care. Until next time.